This is the Business of Apps podcast, bringing you actionable insights from the leaders of the global app industry and the world's fastest growing apps. You can find more app news, data, and analysis over at businessofapps.com.
Welcome to the Business of Apps podcast. On this show, we invite app industry professionals to cover various topics. We promise to do our best to keep it both insightful but brief. In this episode, we have Levi Matkins, CEO at LifeStreet. Levi, welcome back to the Business of Apps podcast.
Thanks for having me again. It's good to be back.
Great. Thank you for coming by. Okay, let's set the stage first. ChatGPT from OpenAI, Bard from Google, Llama from Meta, and a decent number of smaller players are firing on all cylinders to power the generative AI revolution that took off late last year. Of course, for folks who have been listening and watching the AI space for a while, it was not a surprise, but for the rest of us, it was. Generative AI based on large language models are changing the business landscape. Today, we want to talk about its impact on mobile ad campaigns. Levi, you were on this podcast last year, but for the folks who didn't listen to you back then, let's talk about you for a while and your background in tech.
Sure. I'll be pretty quick since it's a repeat for some, I suppose. So I've been in tech for, I think, about 20 years now, which is kind of crazy.
It is.
I got my start sort of like in the early days of search advertising. And, since then I've sort of worked for companies pretty big and small, co-founded a couple of my own companies, and now for the last 10 years have been at LifeStreet and have been the CEO for close to 3 now.
I bet it's pretty interesting every once in a while to look back 10 years, 15 years ago and compare your thoughts and worries back then and what's happening now, like looking at things in perspective, right?
Totally. It's so many things stay the same, and so many of the tools and the underlying technologies have just changed dramatically.
Right. Now, what is LifeStreet today? What sets you apart from the rest of the market?
Sure. So LifeStreet's a mobile marketing platform, built entirely for performance advertising. So functionally, that means LifeStreet is primarily a mobile DSP that helps both app developers and other performance advertisers sort of find their audience at scale on mobile apps. In terms of what sets us apart from the rest, obviously, I don't get to see under the hood of too many other programmatic platforms, unfortunately. But, I think, there's a few things that I'd highlight. I'd sort of say agility. We're a bit of a smaller team. There's 55 of us or so, but we're engineering driven and have the ability to capitalize on new technologies like generative AI pretty quickly. Beyond that, we are expanding to support more than just app developers. So there's a big world of performance advertising out there that I think doesn't quite yet know how to advertise in-app very effectively, and we're working to support that. And then lastly, I'd be remiss if I didn't highlight sort of the team and the culture at LifeStreet. I've been there, it'll be 10 years in November, and I am nowhere near the longest tenured employee. So we have, a super strong culture and a really strong history of collaboration and, getting things done.
Yeah, the last component is really essential for me because technology may be more or less the same in every company. You may, be different a few percent here, a few percent there, but the team is always unique. And since we're spending so much time for work, the team you're running with this marathon of business should be really the one you're really comfortable to push the envelope to move it forward for a long run, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So first of all, ChatGPT has been available for everybody for more than 6 months now. What do you think about it personally? What is your take?
I think it's an incredibly powerful tool. I think, I probably went through a bit of a cycle like most people did, which was, read about it on day one or whatever, you know, have it write poems or, kind of silly things. And then I kind of put it away for a couple of weeks. And then I was like, that's mind blowing. I don't know how to use it. And then I think a few weeks later, I went back to it and I started to understand a little bit more that, just like different ways you could use it and how prompting it sort of gave entirely different classes of results. So I think, all of us that weren't sort of like heavily involved in large language models prior had a bit of a learning curve. And, as of right now, it's pretty integrated into some of our workflows at LifeStreet and some of my personal workflows. And I kind of just take the view that, yes, there are problems with hallucination and other sort of drawbacks of these large language models. We tend to believe them regardless. They, quote unquote, kind of believe themselves or really good at sounding like they do. But I'm of the opinion that, we will mostly get past that. And these things are just massively powerful tools that, with the right guardrails and oversight can just, really sort of change how we interact with technology.
Yeah, there's always this gap between the initial reaction, the first take, then there's always a chance that after a while, a few months, it may either continue to climb up, became more and more in demand, became part of the other tools, the adoption rates goes up. And if it doesn't happen, it was just a fluke. But for ChatGPT, it's definitely not the case. We see all major players are taking it on board. And we're going to cover some of this later in this interview. So every advertising campaign is obviously fueled by ad creatives. So what do you think about ChatGPT replacing a design team to handle ad creatives generation? So as things stand right now, is generative AI tech is ready for this task, or still needs to be humans intervention, revision? Do we see already some tools that app marketers can use that have built-in ChatGPT capabilities?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I think as things stand today, I think it's in most cases, a very helpful tool for a design team to use, both for ideation and production. My sense is that, it's likely not sort of like replacing a design team right now, nor is it, ready to in the very near future. So absolutely still requiring human revision. And there are absolutely tools out there already that marketers can use. We are leveraging generative AI in-house. I've seen some cool tools that do voiceover for video ads, all sort of AI enabled, for instance. So these things are out there right now, and more are coming, I would say. But not ready to sort of just take a design team's function entirely.
Yeah, I heard this description, the analogy that as things stand right now with ChatGPT and similar generative AI tech, it's kind of a toddler age, not even a teenage. If you're comparing the AI with a human being, so you wouldn't trust a toddler your business to run. And necessarily, it has to be a good start, like the draft of something, and you have to interact with this with your own brain and polish it to 100% accuracy. And I particularly like that even the giants, like the biggest players like Google and Meta, on their ad platforms, they kind of play safe. We know that text generation is pretty much a good hit. You're not expecting a lot of hallucination here. So based on your own idea, it can give you nice suggestions, either from Google ads or Facebook ads, But then if it comes to graphics, they play safe. You can replace background, which is not like creating from scratch the entire graphic, and which can be not that helpful, or just intelligent cropping, again, something that machine can do pretty well, and you're not expecting big problems or mistakes in this respect. But not like as of stands right now, they're not pushing to, here's your ad created with a single click of a button based on your just initial prompt, and you're done. So yeah, the major players realize that there's got to be a work to be done to perfect the tech to the point, probably next year, probably later, that will be like more ready to just handle the process, take the bigger chunk of the work of ad production.
Yep, I think that's right.
Ad bidding is the heart of programmatic advertising. Can we see an improvement powered by advances in AI? Obviously, not generative AI, but AI in general. What about A/B testing? How can AI be helpful with this respect?
Sure. So, I mean, I would maybe challenge a little bit of the assumption, because we actually are, so we've been using sort of like deep neural nets for, quite a few years at this point. There are advances in AI that are helping power wins in our modeling platform for sure. But we are actually using large language models to help our predictions. So, a thing that we've been doing is using ChatGPT for data augmentation. So, a good example of that is, there's hundreds of thousands of apps out there in the world that we have the opportunity to bid on. And, it's outside of categorization that either we do manually or the app stores do. It's really hard to find connections between apps at really small data sizes for a campaign. So, we're using ChatGPT, for instance, to tag sort of characteristics about apps from our own sort of app database that we have, that's then able to sort of generalize across those apps. And so we're actually seeing some kind of encouraging wins from that, and are using sort of that tagging methodology, I guess, elsewhere too, which is pretty fun.
And well, this is unexpected. My initial assumption was that generative AI can only be strictly in terms of pricing, setting the frequency, different set of filters to a narrow campaign. But yeah, actually using generative AI, its power to categorize apps, just like you're saying, you don't have a lot of information for each app. It's not a website; it's the app from the App Store. So you have only a few bits of information, and you need to be able to link certain apps and build this set. And again, with this task, are we talking about offloading the task completely to AI, or there's always this button for human being to click edit and change something?
That particular task is mostly automated for us at this point. Anything that goes out like in front of a user or anything, I am a pretty firm believer that today needs to have human oversight. But in terms of like adding signals to the models, I think it's a little, significantly less risky for the types of use cases that we're employing it at so far.
Well, it's pretty cool. So creatives beating A/B testing. What about analytics? Any recent improvements with providing marketers better insight? Any room for improvement?
Definite room for improvement. This is an area where we have done, honestly, some investigations, and thus far kind of determined the insights we're able to see are not reliable enough today. We haven't sort of, I have some hope that, say, like the Wolfram Alpha plugin for ChatGPT could make some of the analytical functions more reliable. I think it's going to be there, but I don't think it's quite there yet. I've certainly tried to upload data, and my team has, and tried to understand trends and, insights, but reliability is significantly worse than an analyst doing that at this moment.
Yeah, so I suppose as of things stand right now, it's pretty hard for a toddler to grasp
Right.
with analytics. Yeah, we
Right.
shouldn't expect from that age to be that smart. Costs. So we do want ROI to go up or at least stay high. Does generative AI can really help to decrease the costs for programmatic advertising?
I think so. I think it can certainly help on the creative production side today. So if my view is that most content creation, not just in ad creatives, but like writ large, is going to approach zero as an incremental cost soon. So, functionally at some point soon, the cost of that creative is approaching zero. And therefore, platforms are able to pass on that savings along. So I think that's coming. We're not really, speaking for ourselves, we're sort of not really using it as a cost reduction tool right now, more of a just massively increasing the amount of personalization and variance that we can create sort of with the same team. So the two approaches are do the same thing and have it cost a lot less, or similar things, or massively increase your output at the same or marginally lower cost, depending. And that's kind of the approach we've taken thus far. That said, of course, that may change as the tools get more and more independent, maybe. But yeah, I think there are cost savings to be had.
Gotcha. Speaking of the team, I don't want to miss this question because it's on the minds of so many professionals, and not only professionals. Do you see generative AI in general have an impact on jobs? Do you see the ad platforms, ad team shrinking because of AI, or not really?
I do. I know, there's a group of people that every time a new technology comes out is very worried that it's going to impact jobs. There's sort of like the famous, horse to car transition, and people working in stables or making shoes for horses or whatever were out of jobs, but more mechanics were hired and things like that. So historically, we haven't seen real like displacement from technology, I would say. I don't trust that to continue personally. I think that at some point, and I think we're probably approaching that point, it will just require less human labor to get these things done. And I don't at the moment see sort of like functional replacement jobs that they create as a result. I think we as a society will have to figure out what we want to reward and how we want to keep people employed longer term. But yeah, I don't think we're just gonna have a whole bunch of like AI prompt engineers that were on the ad creative team. I don't think there's enough work for that. So
Yeah, totally. I can definitely see why we see some people are really getting worried about the situation because, you know, um, it's been for a while knowing that tech gradually replacing certain jobs, but many people felt kind of a safe knowing that, okay, this job is too complicated for a computer program to replace my job. All of a sudden, uh, getting a sense, experiencing what ChatGPT is capable of doing, it's kind of cut them off guard. Oh gosh, my job is actually in jeopardy. Actually, somebody can do writing as I do, even better than me, based on my previous experience. Like if I'm a writer, ChatGPT can just grab the whole stuff written by me prior to this moment and just do the way I do, and I don't need any more in this job. That's question for advertising teams on the ad platforms. Are they, as time goes by, getting more people? Like, will teams will get bigger, hiring more people, or just staying lean? Easier to start a new business with a few folks and not grow a team later on, saving more money, using funding they're getting for projects development and not for hiring more folks, this kind of thing. So uncharted territory, right?
Yeah, I mean, you're already seeing that with companies focusing on profit right now anyway. So that trend of staying lean and not growing teams massively, I think, is certainly here now. It is interesting, though, because I think a lot of us assumed that, the truck drivers or the warehouse workers or whatever were going to be the first ones automated out of a job. And then ChatGPT came along and we realized that we might have been building these things that are automating ourselves out of jobs. So it's a little bit of irony at this point. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see what happens and how we react, though.
Yeah, fingers crossed, whatever it means. Levi, looking back at your experience, your years in programmatic advertising, what would you like to change about this business the most?
That's a good question. I think if I were to sum it up, I would want to wave my magic wand and have sort of like better incentive alignments in the whole ecosystem. A good example of that maybe is, when we lost IDFA in most cases, you saw developers react and generally speaking, were showing more ads to users. So, the developers were looking to maximize their revenues. And that came at the direct cost of user experience. So that's, one example. You could certainly argue that, rewarded video and rewarded advertising helps solve for that. And I would make that argument, which is nice. But I think you also see, sort of incentive misalignment between, ad tech vendors and app developers buying media as well. I think there's, if I had to put it, I think there's a real goal for a lot of vendors to show return on ad spend and show results for their advertisers. But I don't quite think that's exactly the same as actually driving those results. So there's a gap in there between, say a bunch of like attribution gaming that, is sort of, we all know happens, where you may run the same media, but, figure out if you are able to, make changes to your ad templates or whatever that are actually claiming more installs via the MMPs, then you're going to get more business from your advertiser. And that, I think, has created just some weird artifacts that don't put sort of ad tech vendors and advertisers quite in alignment at all times. So, I think in the best world, you would like to think of your partners as kind of extensions of your team and not ones that are like trying to, rip you off and look the other way when fraud happens and things like that. So, I think we all remember sort of like the Uber, fraud kind of, I guess the lawsuit that came out, a number of years ago now, where they were just getting gamed because they weren't super sophisticated. And I think that's like a prime example of, they were out there trying to get results, and other companies saw an opportunity to look the other way and maximize their revenues.
Yeah, it speaks to me to the fact that tech is still, I believe, one of the most unregulated areas in business, and it gave the whole system a good freedom to grow fast. But as we know, move fast and break things is not the best way of moving forward. his Facebook and testament. But this is to say that, just like you were saying, it's a bit of a wild, wild west, probably not a bit of a lot of wild, wild west, where on many occasions people do not have, the interest of their partners in mind. They're just trying to meet their own bottom line, their own agenda, and that's not the way the business should be done. Definitely. Okay, that was my final question. But before I let you go, how can people get in touch with you and get more information about what you do?
Sure. You can always go to lifestreet.com to find out more about what we do at LifeStreet. I'm on LinkedIn. Just search for Levi Matkins and feel free to get in touch with me.
Terrific. Levi, thank you so much for coming back and spending another episode with us. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thanks for having me.
Cool. And that was Levi Matkins, CEO at LifeStreet. To listen to more episodes, subscribe to our podcast on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Podcasts. Just search for Business of Apps and you will find us easily. Remember, we release episodes on Mondays. So subscribe and you will be able to get new episodes on your smartphone, tablet, or computer as soon as we release them. And please don't forget to leave us a review or comment on iTunes. It is highly appreciated. And all episodes will also be available on businessofapps.com. Thank you for listening. See you next week.
Thank you for listening to the Business of Apps podcast. For more, head on over to businessofapps.com.